Hi everyone, sorry about that again. My video keeps getting cut off. So we're gonna look at an article from the Free Thought Project by Claire Burnish. As the media focuses on Russia, government's own data shows U.S. interfered in 81 elections. Ask an average American who makes a habit of following government mouthpieced corporate media about the interference in national elections, and you'll likely elicit a nebulous response concerning Russian hackers and a plan to install Donald Trump in the White House. But you probably won't hear a single syllable pertaining to the United States government's actual attempts to do the same. On Monday, FBI Director James Comey confirmed for the first time publicly the Bureau is officially investigating hotly contentious allegations of Russian meddling in the U.S. election. But even if proven true, such geopolitical escapades better characterize the routine behavior of accusers than of accused. Quote, the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence effort, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, the director announced, adding the Bureau would conduct a probe to discern whether Trump's association had contact with Russian officials. Despite that, the U.S. has hypocritically exerted influence over foreign elections in all corners of the globe. In fact, it has arrogantly done so a whopping 81 times before 1946 and 2000 alone, with just one-third of those operations undertaken overtly. For months, mainstream media parroted murky accusations hurled by politicians keen to point a finger of blame for the apparently stultifying victory of a former reality television host on someone that the Russians had somehow surreptitiously undermined the election-centric foundation of American democracy. While that has yet to prove true, this new Red Scare constitutes a duplicitous attempt by the pot to call the kettle an election meddler. Researcher Dov Levin of Carnegie Mellon University's Institute for Politics and Strategy, an expert on the topic at hand, discussed the lengthy but incomplete list of times the U.S. government has interfered in other nations' elections with NPR's Ari Shapiro. Asked, for example, where this tampering tangibly altered results, Levin stated, quote, one example of that was our intervention in Serbia, Yugoslavia, in the 2000 election there. Slobodan Milosevic was running for re-election, and we didn't want him to stay in power because they're due to his tendency, to disrupt the Balkans and his human rights violations. So we intervened in various ways for the opposition candidate, Vojislav Kostunica, and we gave funding to the opposition, and we gave them training and campaigning aid, and according to my estimate, that assistance was crucial in enabling the opposition to win. Levin reiterated the more blatant method with which the U.S. asserts dominance through the overt coups or all-out regime change branding the nation a notorious interventionist are not among the list of the 80-plus attempts to manipulate the electoral outcome. As for the issue of pot versus kettle, Levin explained that, although Russia and other powerful nations indisputably employ similar tactics, the United States has been quite prodigious in its efforts. Quote, well, for my data set, the United States is the most common user of this technique. Russia, or the Soviet Union, since 1945, has used it half as much. My estimate has been 36 cases between 1946 and 2000. We know also that the Chinese have used this technique, and the Venezuelans, when the late Hugo Chavez was still in power in Venezuela and other countries. As sanctimoniously as U.S. politicians cry foul about the Russians, it would behoove the new McCarthyites to reflect on the nation's sticky imperialist fingerprints around the globe. like that time in 1996 when the United States undertook an extensive secret operation to ensure the presidency of Boris Yeltsin. Uh, so we see everything that the corporate media accuses of Macedonian clickbait in Russia. You know, we see that we're guilty of these things much more than Russia, much more than anywhere else. Let me tell you, folks. It's just a ridiculous world we live in, where, you know. But now we're going to look at what Rachel Maddow was actually talking about. What Rachel Maddow was talking about against Bernie Sanders supporters like Debbie Lusignan and Caitlin Johnstone. We're going to talk about what was actually going on outside of the myth of Albanian dick pill advertisements and all this. So this was what was recorded by the LA Times from back around when Maddow was saying that these allegations were happening. There's an article from May 9th, 2016 by Evan Halper. So, be nice to Hillary Clinton online or risk a confrontation with her super PAC. When the internet's legions of Hillary hecklers steal away to chat rooms and Facebook pages to vent grievances about Clinton, express revulsion toward Clinton, and launch attacks on Clinton, they now may find themselves in a surprising place, confronted by a multi-million-dollar super PAC working with Clinton. Hillary Clinton's well-heeled backers have opened a new frontier in digital campaigning, one that seems to have been inspired by some of the internet's worst instincts. Correct the record, a super PAC coordinating with Clinton's campaign is spending some $1 million to find and confront social media users who post unflattering messages about the Democratic frontrunner. In effect, the effort aims to spend a large sum of money to increase the amount of trolling that already exists online. The plan comes as Clinton operatives grapple with the reality that her supporters just aren't as engaged and aggressive online as her detractors inside and outside the Democratic Party. The lack of engagement is one of Clinton's bigger tactical vulnerabilities, particularly when compared with rivals like Donald Trump, whose viral social media attacks are legion, and Senator Bernie Sanders, who is backed by a passionate army of media-savvy millennials. Some experts on digital media campaigns think the idea of launching a paid army of, quote, former reporters, bloggers, public affairs specialists, designers, and others to produce online counterattacks is unlikely to prove successful. Others, however, say Clinton has little choice but to try, given the ubiquity of online assaults and the difficulty of squelching even probably untrue narratives once they have taken hold. And we have a tweet from April 22nd, 2016 from Katie Halper, who's a big Sanders supporter, and you should, she's a good political activist. You should look at her work. And she wrote, at least Bernie bros are committed enough to troll for free. Hillary Clinton needs to buy hers. Hashtag barrier breakers 2016. Pretty funny. At the same time, however, using a super PAC to create a counterweight to movements that have sprung up organically is another reflection of the campaign's awkwardness with engaging online. Digital pros say, quote, it is meant to appear to be coming organically from the people in their social media networks in a groundswell of activism, when in fact it is highly paid and highly tactical, said Brian Donahue, chief executive of the consulting firm Kraft Media Digital. Quote, "This is what the Clinton campaign has always been about," he said. "It runs the risk of being exactly what their opponents accuse them of being, a campaign that appears to be populist but is a smokescreen that is paid and brought to you by lifetime political operatives and high-level consultants." The task force designed to stop the spread of online misinformation and misogyny is the brainchild of David Brock, a Clinton confidant who once made a career of spreading such misinformation and misogynistic attacks against her and Bill Clinton. Her critics say he kept his taste for dirty tricks when he switched sides to become one of the Clintons' most valued operatives. The mere mention of Correct the Record makes some critics seethe. Super PACs are typically prohibited from working in tandem with candidates, but Correct the Record is doing just that by exploiting a loophole in a campaign finance law that it says permits such coordination with digital campaigns. Quote, "Clinton herself is saying we need campaign finance reform," said Paul Ryan, Deputy Executive Director of the Campaign Legal Center and Advocacy Group. Quote, "Yet, her lawyers are pushing the boundaries to get around campaign finance laws." Brock referred questions to Elizabeth Chappelle, a spokesperson for the Super PAC, who emailed a brief statement saying that Barrier Breakers, as the effort is labeled, quote, "is only engaged in positive content, even when responding to offensive content, and is always identified as Correct the Record," she wrote. The email also emphasized that Correct the Record is spending the $1 million in a way that it argues is legal under rules governing super PACs. The reaction to the initiative from supporters of Sanders has been predictable, and it has not been to reconsider their vitriol toward the frontrunner.